Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, the war in Iran escalates as we learn more about the 6 American service members killed. President Trump suggests most of Iran's military capability has been knocked out, including the Navy and Air Force. Plus, the new report about the deadly attack that killed 6 American service members. Meanwhile, Americans stuck across the Middle East. The State Department says it is actively securing military and charter flights for those who need to get out. And for the first time tonight, President Trump at the White House answering questions about the war in Iran. As the U.S. is on high alert, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is grilled on Capitol Hill.
The fact that you can't admit to a mistake, which looks like under investigation, is going to prove that Ms. Good and Mr. Pretty probably should not have been shot in the face and in the back.
Senators in both parties heavily criticizing her record as she refuses to apologize for calling 2 American citizens terrorists after they were shot and killed by federal agents. A father whose son is accused of killing 2 students and 2 teachers at school learns his own fate. Prosecutors say he bought the gun and ignored his son's warning signs. The high-stakes midterm elections begin. American voters cast the first primary ballots in 3 states tonight. What the results mean for the future of each party. And on this primary night in several states across the country, tonight ABC News Live is introducing you to a pair of twins, proving that politics can truly be a family affair, even if it's not eye to eye.
Is the country on the right track or the wrong track?
So far off the wrong track. Right track, but there's a lot of work to do.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. It is a busy Tuesday night with breaking news. Tonight, U.S. embassies and consulates are coming under attack, and Americans are stranded across the region as the war escalates. And we're also learning the names of some of those U.S. troops killed in that Iranian strike on a U.S. tactical operations center in Kuwait. But first, here in the U.S., the first primary ballots have been cast in this consequential 2026 midterm election year. Both parties are hearing from voters as Republicans are trying to defend razor-thin margins. In the House, Democrats would need to win back 3 seats to take control. In the Senate, a bit of a more difficult task for Democrats, who would need to flip 4 seats. Results are coming in across Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas. And now all polls in Texas have now closed, including the Dallas County Democratic primary, which had been extended to 10 p.m. Eastern. Let's take a look at where some of the big races stand tonight, starting with Texas, the most expensive Senate primary in history. We'll go to a runoff in the Texas Republican Senate primary. ABC News projects incumbent John Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton will advance. You see Wesley Hunt only getting 12.9% of the vote there. In the Democratic U.S. Senate primary, State Representative James Tallarico with 51.8% of the vote, and Congressman Jasmine Crockett with 46.9% of the vote. We may not know a winner until tomorrow in that race. Incumbent Governor Greg Abbott is projected to win the Republican gubernatorial primary election as he seeks his 4th term in a state where governors do not have term limits. And in the Texas Democratic governor primary, ABC News projects Gina Hinojosa will win. In North Carolina, the race for a U.S. Senate seat, former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper is projected as the winner of the state's Democratic U.S. Senate primary. 95% of the vote in so far, and he handily beat his opponent, getting 91.9% of the vote. He looks toward now the battleground race in November while portraying himself as an agent of change.
We have a long way to go until November. Hey, but if you want change in Washington, do you? Yeah! This campaign is for you.
A lot of enthusiasm there. And tonight, former RNC Chairman Michael Whatley thanked his supporters after securing the Republican nomination for Senate in North Carolina, thanking President Donald Trump for his support in the race and painting former Governor Roy Cooper as too liberal.
And I want to thank President Donald J. Trump for his strong and unwavering support in this race. His leadership has changed our country, and I am proud to stand with him in the fight to secure our border, to strengthen our economy, and put America first.
I want to bring in political director Avery Harper to break down what we're seeing tonight. In North Carolina, Democrat Roy Cooper and Republican Mike Whatley have locked in their positions in a fight for the seat of Senator Thom Tillis, who will not be running for re-election this year. Meanwhile, in Texas, infighting between state Republicans and record-breaking ad spending across both parties drew much of the nation's interest as both sides of the aisle find themselves in identity-defining primaries. Texas remains a tight race. What's at stake?
This is an opportunity for Democrats to possibly turn Texas blue. They've long tried and they've long failed to do that. And so remains to be seen exactly what's happening in that primary. There's still lots of vote, outstanding, especially in and around Dallas, where Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is from. But that is really a race that is about the tone and the direction of the campaign. We know that Jasmine Crockett is someone who is a fighter. She talks about being a fighter, fighting against this current Republican Party, this current president. And she's trying to really rally the base and mobilize the base to turn out. The different approach we see from James Talrico, the state representative, is his efforts to try and be a bridge builder, building a bridge between Democrats and independents and Democrats and Republicans who may be uncomfortable with this current administration. On the Republican side of things, a real remarkable race here for the incumbent Senator John Cornyn. He should be in position to win this race very easily. He has served in that role for more than 2 decades, $70 million spent, and he has to fight even longer now to try and become the nominee for his party, as we know that race will go to a runoff.
And North Carolina, we pretty much knew at the outset that it would be the former head of the RNC, Michael Whatley, versus the former governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. What are you looking for in that race? I
am looking for how Michael Whatley is going to message to the middle, right? He is somebody with very clear ties to President Trump. And we know that in this midterm cycle and midterm cycles more broadly, that they are referendums on the president of the United States. And so they can be unforgiving to the president's party. So how is he going to message to independents in the state of North Carolina and maybe even Republicans who are uncomfortable with what they've seen of this current Republican Party? Roy Cooper was a prized recruit for Democrats who are trying to make gains and take control of the Senate. He is a popular 2-term governor in that state. He is well known throughout the state of North Carolina. And so I'm interested to see how he tries to capitalize on that and on the fact that there is lots of anti-Trump sentiment throughout that state, too.
All right, Avery Harper, it has been a pleasure working with you all night. Thank you so much. Many more primaries to go. And now I want to bring in ABC News political contributor and Democratic strategist Amanda Renteria and legal and political analyst and RNC surrogate Mahek Cook. Thank you both so much for joining us. Let's start with the primaries in Texas, the most expensive primary on record, more than $100 million spent. And now a runoff. The president stayed neutral in Texas, not endorsing any of the candidates ahead of the primaries. How did this shape what we're seeing tonight? And Amanda, we can start with you.
Sure. Well, I think this is a big window into what we're going to see in the midterms. It's why campaigns everywhere are going to take a look at what happens in this race. And the first thing that you are seeing is people are fired up, whether you're on the Republican side of the ticket or the Democratic side of the ticket. And what you are beginning to sort of take shape is, what is the right messaging? Who is sending that right message? So to see Cornyn have to go into a runoff with Paxton, that means the Republican primary will take a little bit longer to figure out who's their key candidate. And on the Democratic side, we might go into the morning, but at the end of the day, we're going to have one person to go through. And I think the biggest story here is that people are fired up, that all the noise that is out there, what it is doing for Democrats in Texas is saying, you two have a shot at that Senate race. You two have a shot at getting excited. And the momentum that Democrats have been seeing over and over in races since the beginning of the year, they've been winning, but they haven't put that to the test until now in a red state that really it looks like they can maybe actually take over Texas. And so this is a big night. It's already a win for Democrats to see the kind of numbers they're seeing, and really then to learn what is the message that voters on the Democratic side want to be hearing. And these are two really great candidates. It's just a matter of what does the electorate want to see.
And still a very tight race between Tallarico and Crockett. Mehek, based on tonight's results, what messages do you think are resonating with voters?
Look, I think this is one of the most important races we're watching across the country, and all eyes are on Texas because there's a test of political strategy today. What voters want is common sense, and we're trying to look for that on both sides of the aisle. When you look at the Republican side, I think voters are honestly tired of establishment candidates. This is why you saw a primary, and I know everybody says that President Trump didn't weigh in, but in my opinion, not weighing in when you have an incumbent for 4 terms says something. It sends a message. I think President Trump is actually testing Texas to say, are you with me or are you still for the establishment? So I think this race is critical for Republicans and for turnout. So we'll have to see what happens with the runoff. But I think this could mark a turn for a MAGA base or back to establishment. And then when I look at the Democrat stage today, I think that Jasmine Crockett has done a disservice to the Democrat Party. I miss the party of Bill Clinton and the moderates and the common sense. And I think this is where James Tallarico could be the first candidate in 30 years to break a mold in Texas if he's able to win, hold a line, and continue to beat down common sense. Because let me tell you, voters on both sides just want to be able to pay their bills. They want safety and security at the border. And I think that's the path for victory. I don't see that happening on the Democrat side, but James Tallarico has given me pause. He is somebody who reaches across the aisle, who wants to work hard and build bridges rather than tear down this country. And I think that's really important. I haven't seen somebody on the left act or speak like him until he arose in the Texas primary here.
Amanda, the president in the presidential election made great gains with Latinos. Do you think that his stance on immigration has hurt him in today's primaries?
Well, that's certainly what people are going to be looking through when they look at what happens in the Rio Grande Valley. But we are seeing around the country the concern that people have when the Trump administration came out and said it's just going to be criminals. And all of a sudden, citizens are actually being detained and being harmed and being killed. That changes the story for Latinos who are out there, who were in support potentially of this president. It opens up a different kind of relationship. And so it's hard to see in this primary because Latinos don't necessarily come out in primaries in the same way that other ethnicities come out. But we are seeing an excitement, and we are seeing an excitement both for Tallarico and for Jasmine Crockett to say we need a new way. Both of these candidates are a new generation. And so on that point, I think that's right. The Democratic Party is looking for new faces, whether that's someone with the fire brand or someone with the faith brand. You are seeing both of them in Texas. And that's why Democrats are so excited and fired up to be in this race.
Amanda Renteria, Mehek Cook, we thank you both so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Now to the Middle East, where more countries are being pulled into the conflict as the war in Iran ramps up. Tonight, a drone strike reported near the U.S. consulate in Dubai caused a fire to break out. Earlier, drones also hit the U.S. consulate in Saudi Arabia. At least 6 embassies are now closed in the region. 24 hours after urging Americans to leave the Middle East, the State Department now says it's preparing military and charter flights for Americans who want to get out. This as the U.S. and Israel have intensified their attacks with new explosions in Tehran targeting the new Iranian leadership. And tonight, we're learning the names of some of those U.S. troops killed in that Iranian strike on a U.S. tactical operations center in Kuwait. So how long will this war continue? We have team coverage tonight across the region and here in the U.S. Our Ian Pannell reports from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, U.S. embassies and consulates under attack from Iran, with U.S. citizens trapped in the war-torn region. The State Department now scrambling to secure military aircraft and charter planes to get them out, after telling Americans in 14 countries to evacuate. Tonight, video verified by ABC News shows an Iranian drone slamming into the U.S. consulate in Dubai. The explosion and fire in a parking lot next to the consulate. The U.S. Embassy in Amman, Jordan, also targeted. And drone strikes shutting down the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Officials say so far no one's been injured in these strikes. And tonight, with Americans stranded across the Middle East, our Karen Travers asking President Trump, was there not a plan for this before attacking Iran?
Commercial air travel right now is severely restricted in the Middle East, and thousands of Americans are stranded. Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and will you send planes to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly.
Secretary Rubio. Late today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the plan to get Americans out.
And it'll be a variety of methods: charter flights, military flights and transports, expanded commercial opportunities, and in some cases land routes that will allow them to go to neighboring countries who might have open airports at that point.
Tonight, the president saying he was, quote, surprised by the scope of Iran's retaliation across the region, even though Iran had clearly warned how it would respond.
I was surprised, I think, and now those countries are all fighting against them and fighting strongly against them.
Tonight, Iran effectively shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil flows, sending oil and gas prices up already. Tonight, President Trump saying, if necessary, the US Navy will provide escorts for ships in the Strait of Hormuz. As US and Israel launching another wave of strikes on Iran. More than 700 Iranians killed, according to the Red Crescent. Today, there was a mass burial for the victims of the school attack, which left more than 160 dead. The Pentagon yet to explain what happened. And Israel saying it struck an area in Qom where Iran's Interim Leadership Council was meeting to appoint a new supreme leader. Tonight, verified videos online showing the area where those meetings were allegedly being held, reduced to rubble, but Iran denying they were meeting there. Trump asked who'll lead Iran next.
Most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports.
The president was asked what the worst case would be for Iran's next leader.
The worst case would be we do this and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen.
Tonight, the Pentagon identifying 4 of the 6 service members killed after that Iranian strike in Kuwait on a US tactical operations center. US officials tell ABC News that facility did not have adequate defenses, making them vulnerable to aerial attacks. And after 3 US F-15 fighter jets were shot down over Kuwait by friendly fire, one of them seen spiraling to the ground. Go! Remarkable video, verified by ABC News circulating online, shows the tense moments as locals confront one of the downed American pilots, approaching one with a pipe. His parachute still attached. That pilot putting his hands up and kneeling before the men realized he was an American.
You're safe.
And this video showing Kuwaitis finding another one of those pilots.
Thank you for helping us.
After she's safely ejected too.
Tonight, the war is spreading further in the Middle East. At least 11 countries are now involved. Many are working to intercept incoming strikes from Iran and its proxies, all while Israel expands its military operations, launching attacks on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. France and the UK are also now sending warships into the area. Here's our chief international correspondent, James Longman, in Iraq tonight.
The growing race tonight to destroy missile launchers positioned deep inside Iran as they continue their barrage of retaliatory strikes across the Middle East. Gulf nations are working night and day using advanced US air defenses to strike the danger from the sky.
But the deepening concern, will there be enough US interceptors?
And could Iran's supply of cheap drones exhaust these multi-million-dollar systems? Drone and missiles already causing chaos from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain to Kuwait. US embassies and troops in the firing line. The UAE says it has been targeted by at least 174 ballistic missiles, as well as several hundred drones. Military officials say it takes 2 or 3 interceptors to shoot down just one ballistic missile, and experts predict Iran has a stockpile of more than 2,000.
They're still lobbing some missiles. At some point, they won't even be able to do that because we're hitting all of their carriers, we're hitting all of their missile stock.
Some rockets penetrating the defences beyond the firing line. A UK base in Cyprus attacked. Meanwhile, the war is now expanding to a second front. Israeli troops moving into southern Lebanon, targeting the Iranian-backed proxy Hezbollah. Our Matt Rivers is there, landing in Beirut amid several airstrikes.
So you can hear that's the latest Israeli airstrike and another. You can see the smoke coming there behind me.
Americans living in Beirut, like many across this region, now forced to wait it out in an increasingly dangerous combat zone.
Joining us now to dissect issues further is Shibli Telhami. He's the Anwar Sadat Professor for Peace and Development at the University of Maryland. He's also advised every U.S. administration from George H.W. Bush to Barack Obama. Professor Telhami, good to have you on Prime. President Trump has long said that he would end wars. He now says wars can be fought forever. Recent polls find that most Americans do not support the strikes in the Middle East. What do you make of Americans' response to this war?
There's no question that Americans oppose the war. We actually at the University of Maryland had a poll, national poll, early in February, and we found only 21% of the public supported war. 49 opposed it, and then there were 30% who were undecided. The interesting thing is that even after the attack, normally after you have an attack, you have a rally around the flag effect. That's not surprising under any circumstances. This time, a poll that was taken after by the Washington Post really didn't show much of a rally around the flag effect. There was a little bit of that among Republicans. A lot of the undecideds supported the war, but overall, 52% opposed the war, as opposed to 49 before, and 39 supported the war. So I think the public really hasn't heard an explanation that's satisfying. The president didn't make a case for it. There were already voices opposed to it because there was also, the 12-day war several months ago, where even within MAGA, people were voicing opposition to the fact the U.S. entered Israel's war then. And I think you can see that there were voices within the Republican Party on the margins opposing the war beforehand. Now they're doubling down. Certainly Democrats opposed it. More importantly for the president, independents are very much opposed to it. So he's facing a lot of opposition. Now, just today, President Trump said that he might have forced Israel's hand to strike Iran first. What's your reaction to that? Well, that's a bit laughable, honestly, because he's obviously reacting to what Secretary of State Rubio said yesterday, which he said basically that Israel had decided it was going to attack. The U.S. knew that means that the Iranians will retaliate against American bases. And rather than wait for that, the U.S. was going to take the initiative and join Israel to diminish the reaction of Iran. That's basically what he said. So that generated a lot of reaction. Of course, that's what a lot of people have been arguing, both some within MAGA, some in the Democratic Party, saying this is Israel's war. That played into it. And I think the president had to correct himself. He felt like he's being told that he's being led by the Israeli prime minister, taken up the war because the Israeli prime minister made him do it. So I think he's fighting against that, but the damage has been done for him. And just in the last few seconds that we have you, today President Trump said the worst case scenario in this war would be a new Iranian leader who's like Ayatollah Khamenei. What's the future of Iran's leadership, do you think? Well, I think we don't know, and it's not up to the United States to decide. Ultimately, it's going to be the Iranian people who are going to decide. The worst case scenario is that actually Iran descends into anarchy, and that's a real possibility if the regime, in fact, does fall, in which case there will be instability across the entire region, something that does not serve American interests. Professor Telhami, we thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it. My pleasure. In the last few days, the Trump administration has provided conflicting explanations for why it launched strikes on Iran. All of this, as many in Congress are demanding answers. Our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott has those details.
Tonight, the White House pressed to clarify its shifting explanations for why the U.S. went to war with Iran. 24 hours ago, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the administration believed Israel was going to attack Iran first and was concerned Iran would then retaliate against the U.S.
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded.
Rubio's words setting off a firestorm.
I find it very disturbing that we are committing this nation to war based upon a decision by even though a staunch ally, and I'm a supporter of Israel, but I don't think anybody should drive our decision to go to war, but the interests of the United States.
Today, when I asked the president about it, he contradicted Rubio.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand.
Late tonight, Rubio was asked to explain what he said 24 hours ago.
The president determined we were not going to get hit first. It's that simple, guys.
It comes amid growing concern from some of the president's core supporters that he took the United States to war after long promising he would not. This is what he said during the 2024 campaign.
She said, look at him, listen to him. He's going to start a war. Listen to his rhetoric. He's going to start a war. I said, no, no, no. My rhetoric is going to keep us out of wars.
Rachel Scott joins us now from the White House. Rachel, how's the administration responding after all of this back and forth?
Well, they're certainly getting a lot of questions, not just from reporters here at the White House, but also from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle there on Capitol Hill. There have been multiple briefings by Trump administration officials to Congress, but the administration tonight is undeterred. Senior administration officials tell me that this campaign is going to continue, but I will say it is clear there is immense concern for many of the Americans who are stuck in that region, Lindsay.
You can imagine. All right, Rachel Scott for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. Joining us now is House Foreign Affairs Chair, Republican Florida Representative Brian Mast. Chairman, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Let's start with an obvious question. Would you say that the U.S. is at war right now? And if so, should Congress have been consulted?
The United States of America is conducting a very specific operation. It is absolutely combat operations, but the operation is destroy every single piece of Iranian military hardware that can reach out and touch United States forces in the region, because they have used those pieces of hardware to reach out and touch the United States of America. But that is the specific parameters of it. We know this operation is complete when that is conducted. That is mission accomplished.
So you don't feel that Congress should have been consulted beforehand?
Congress was consulted through the Gang of Eight roughly a week before this operation took place. The Gang of Eight also was met yesterday. I was a part of that along with others, given the same information that the initial briefing gave. And then there was a classified briefing that just concluded maybe 30 minutes ago, given that same information to all members of Congress. So there was notification. On top of that, that notification outlines that the president was well within his Article 2 authority to go out there and defend the United States of America against an imminent threat, which is what this was. And I would say, to anybody that wants to say, what is imminent threat against the United States of America? You played clip of Secretary Rubio speaking about that we felt as though we were going to be struck first. And that's certainly an important point. An additional important point is we were in the middle of negotiations with Iran. Those negotiations, although some people in other countries said they were going well, they were not going well. Iran was unwilling to talk about nukes, missiles, or their proxies. So it wasn't aiming at what we actually needed to talk about, where they were hitting Americans. And the other point that I would make on its imminency is simply this. Almost every single member of Congress, some of them are new, so they haven't had the opportunity to vote on, but almost every single member of Congress has voted to say that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror. Why? Because they train these proxies, they fund these proxies, they direct these proxies to go out there and hit Americans and our allies, and then they reward them for doing so. That's how imminent the threat is, and it goes well beyond that.
Has the loss of American military personnel killed in action weighed on your support at all?
It weighs on my heart. I know exactly what that means to lose friends in service. The cold crack of a 21-gun salute, I've heard it way too many times. The slow, sullen hum of taps, I've heard that way too many times. I've seen too many families handed flags. But what I would say about that is, I mourn, we as a very grateful nation will mourn these 6 that we've lost, and we pray that there's no more. But unfortunately, we have buried far more because of the hand of Iran prior to this. And this operation is to ensure that in the future, that is not a threat that we face any longer.
Today, Secretary Rubio said 1,500 Americans have requested assistance to leave the Middle East, but the State Department's hotline has a pre-recorded message telling callers not to rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation. The State Department says that it's working on arranging military planes and charter flights to evacuate Americans. But in the meantime, what's your advice to a citizen who's stuck in the region?
I would give several advices to those citizens. It's important that we know as the U.S. government exactly how many people want to get out of the region, where those individuals specifically are located, what is their condition. That is to say, do they have some kind of medical condition that they need to carry equipment with them? Are they ambulatory? Are they not? What are the ages of the individuals? How many in their party? How quick can they get to this location? Because when you're talking about an opportunity to move people out via air, given the limited air cover that exists there right now, you may be talking about a window of only an hour or a couple of hours to get people out. The U.S. government is working very specifically to make sure that any aircraft that go in there are the largest possible aircraft that could go in there to maximize individuals that get out. Also work to get people out via land corridors in any way that they can to where they can get commercial flights. Now that message to not rely on the U.S. government to get out, if you can find another way to get out, certainly use that mechanism, but absolutely reach out to the U.S. government, reach out to any of your members of Congress office, give us that information of where you are. We want to know. We will relay that to the consulates, the embassies, anybody in the State Department, so that they have that accurate count.
And just before we let you go, would you support boots on the ground?
There's no reason for us to put boots on the ground. The 90 million, 92 million individual Iranians need to be the boots on the ground for changing the future of their country. The president has been very clear about that. He wants to see that on the ground support from Iranians when they can stick their heads out, when these operations conclude that are taking place and people can come out and see what's taking place. That has to be the boots on the ground. But the other side of that is we are in combat operations. There's never going to be a moment that we say we're not going to do something because it is not tactically or strategically wise.
House Foreign Affairs Chair, Republican Florida Representative Brian Mast, we thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was in the hot seat today. She testified before the Senate and faced questions about immigration enforcement operations following the deadly shootings in Minneapolis. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has more.
Tonight, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem under political attack, grilled over her agency's aggressive deportation policies and the deaths of American citizens Alex Preddy and Renee Good, who were killed by federal immigration officers. Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who has called for Noem to resign, was relentless.
And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. What we've seen is innocent people getting detained that turn out are American citizens.
But many Senate Republicans defending DHS immigration tactics.
These men and women who are trying to solve this problem that was created by our Democratic colleagues, you have no idea of the mess they inherited.
And Noem was blunt, saying her job is to deport the millions of undocumented here illegally.
I'm blessed and honored that President Trump has asked me to do this job.
Democrats pushed Noem to apologize for what critics said were misleading statements and suggesting that both Preddy and Good were domestic terrorists.
Let me give you an opportunity to do the right thing.
Noem did not apologize, but offered her condolences.
When we have these situations happen, we always offer our condolences to those families, and I offer mine as well.
She was also asked about the media campaign that cost taxpayers $220 million that often stars Noem herself.
We will find you, and we will deport you.
Republican Senator John Kennedy.
How do you square that concern for waste, which I share?
The president tasked me with getting the message out to the country and to other countries where we were seeing the invasion come from.
Pierre Thomas joins us now. Pierre, Secretary Noem's testimony comes amid a dire backdrop. Just paint that picture for us.
Well, the bickering comes with Homeland Security facing a budget shutdown, Lindsay, and with the nation in a war with Iran. And Lindsay, this is perhaps the most dangerous threat environment in recent memory.
Pierre, there's also reporting about Iranian clerics calling on Muslims to avenge Khamenei's death. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this is going to add another layer of tension. U.S. officials are already looking at people who are potentially sympathizers and also who may have direct ties to Iran. So this is another layer of concern because they are calling for direct action against America.
Pierre Thomas for us. Thanks so much, Pierre. Coming up, if the war with Iran drags on, will the U.S. have enough missiles? We look at stockpiles by the numbers. And they're identical twins, but politically, they couldn't be more different. Meet the brothers bridging a political divide in Indiana. Welcome back, everyone. One concern that could become top of mind if the war with Iran lasts multiple weeks will be if the U.S. is able to produce missiles at the same speed we're using them. That's what we're looking at in tonight's By the Numbers. Since the war began on Saturday, the United States has struck more than 1,700 targets inside Iran. But the biggest concern is not the offensive missiles, but the defensive missiles that intercept incoming Iranian attacks. According to defense contracts, the U.S. has been producing 96 THAAD anti-ballistic missiles every year. Those can be used to defend against Iran's most powerful missiles. THAAD is an acronym that stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. In January, a new contract was signed with Lockheed Martin to quadruple that number to 400 missiles a year, but there is a cost to consider. Each one of those THAAD defense missiles costs $12.7 million to produce. The supply can deplete quickly because 2 interceptors are launched for every 1 incoming missile. One military policy expert who spoke to ABC News says that if interceptors are used at the same pace as during the conflict with Iran last summer, the U.S. would only have a 2-week supply at most. Part of ensuring the stockpile doesn't run out is neutralizing Iran's ability to launch missiles. Today, the IDF reported that they have dismantled approximately 300 Iranian missile launchers since the start of the operation. For more on our weapons capability, we bring in ABC News contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy. Mick, thanks for joining us. Are our own stockpiles potentially running low, and why? And why? What has depleted our supply of missiles in the first place?
So, Lindsay, it's not just from this particular campaign. It also goes back to the 12-day war where the U.S. defended Israel from hundreds of missiles and drones coming at them from Iran. And now, of course, Iran has gone beyond just attacking military installations in the Gulf countries. They're going after civilian targets. So our partners are using these SM-3s, these missiles, the interceptor missiles, at the cyclic rate, quite frankly, because they have to. They can't allow their civilian population to be hit. So it is going to be somewhat of a logistical war of attrition between the United States and Iran, because at the same time, we are trying to keep up with the flow of munitions out to the region. We are trying to deplete Iran of their ability to strike. So the faster we do that, and obviously right now we're in the middle of the second major wave. I think we're getting actually close to 2,000 targets struck in about 100 hours of combat. That is going to deplete the Iranians of their ability to actually fire ballistic missiles and these Shahed drones that are so destructive.
And we know that the Patriot missile systems and the THAAD systems are the world's gold standard for anti-missile defense. But what makes them so difficult and costly to operate?
Well, they're very advanced weapon systems, and that's something the United States tends to go with, whether it's a armed drone or these THAAD in Patriot air and missile defense systems. They're very effective, but very expensive. And our enemies get that. So they send, you just mentioned, $12 million per interceptor missile. Well, these Shahed drones cost around $35,000. So do the math. Eventually, that becomes extraordinarily difficult for us to keep up with their ability to keep launching these relatively inexpensive drones to cause so much damage. So the U.S. is trying to deal with that. We've created our own Shahed drone. It's called the Lucas. We're trying to compete in that sphere too. So it's not just these super high-end, very expensive weapon systems, both offensive and defensive, that the United States have. We need to be able to compete at all levels, and we need to understand that the war of attrition, when it comes to logistics, also has to do with the expense of the defensive and offensive weapon system.
Mick Mulroy, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, as always. Coming up, our coverage continues on the evolving situation in the Middle East as the war in Iran escalates. And we have the latest on the deadly mass shooting in Austin, Texas, which has sadly claimed another life. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. The Pentagon identified 4 of the 6 U.S. troops killed after an Iranian strike in Kuwait. These are the first Americans killed in action in the joint U.S.-Israel strikes against Iran. Meanwhile, U.S. embassies and consulates in the region are under attack. The State Department is scrambling to get U.S. citizens out of the area. A third person has died after Sunday's mass shooting at a bar in Austin, Texas. Police identified the victim as 30-year-old Jorge Peterson. The 2 others others killed were college students 21-year-old Savita Shawn and 19-year-old Ryder Harrington. The suspect has been identified as a naturalized U.S. citizen born in Senegal. The FBI continues to investigate a possible terrorism motive for the shooting after finding him wearing a shirt with the Iranian flag. According to a major Lancet report covering 1990 to 2023, breast cancer death rates in the U.S. dropped by more than 40%, while rates of new diagnoses fell by nearly 30%. Despite progress in high-income countries, low-income countries saw breast cancer death rates nearly double since 1990. And still ahead, the Georgia father found guilty of murder after his son committed a school shooting. Our Steve Osensami has that story. And Justin Timberlake is suing to block the video release of his DWI arrest. Those details straight ahead. We're learning that at least some of the dozen FBI agents and staff fired last week by FBI Director Kash Patel had helped to monitor threats from Iran, according to multiple sources. Others in the group, sources say, were dismissed for helping with the investigation into why President Trump was storing classified documents at Mar-a-Lago after his first term. An FBI spokesperson told ABC that although the Bureau does not comment on personnel matters, counterintelligence operations remain robust. Now to the verdict in the trial of a father whose son is accused of killing 2 students and 2 teachers at a high school in Georgia. The father was found guilty of murder and involuntary manslaughter. Here's our Steve Osensami.
It took a jury deep in the heart of gun country less than 2 hours to hold this Georgia father responsible after police say that his son murdered 2 students and 2 teachers at this suburban Atlanta high school in 2024. The teenager is seen here in surveillance videos before the shooting, getting on a school bus, and here at Appalachia High School hiding an AR-15 style rifle that his father had given him for Christmas under a poster board.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Tonight, 55-year-old Colin Gray is facing more than 100 years in prison, convicted of second-degree murder and more than 24 other charges.
Sorry, boys.
Jurors agreed that he ignored signs that his son could kill, giving him the gun even after authorities are seen here warning him that his teenager was accused of making threats against another school. And the father had seen this on his son's bedroom wall, what prosecutors say was a shrine to the Parkland, Florida school shooter.
This was multiple warnings over a lengthy period of time.
In court, the families of the victims wept, and prosecutors are saying tonight that this conviction should be a strong warning for parents everywhere. The son, now 16 years old, is pleading not guilty to murder, and he is awaiting trial. Lindsay?
A small plane lands in the Hudson River. A half-marathon mishap leads top runners off course, and Bad Bunny breaks a record. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. New details about the small plane that crash landed into the Hudson River. The occupants were identified as 31-year-old Liam Darcy, a certified flight instructor, and a 17-year-old male student. Officials said after taking off and beginning the return leg to Long Island, the aircraft began experiencing mechanical problems as the aircraft's engines failed midair.
We're going into the Hudson River. I don't think we're going to make the airport.
The plane touched down on an icy stretch of the river north of New York City. Both occupants swam about 50 feet through frigid water to reach the shoreline, then sought temporary shelter inside a nearby building while awaiting emergency responders. New York City paid more than $117 million to settle police misconduct lawsuits last year, according to an analysis of city data. Taxpayer money was used to settle more than 1,000 cases, including $47 million for wrongful convictions, while $28 million was used to settle cases involving incidents that happened more than 2 decades ago. The NYPD has paid out nearly $800 million in taxpayer money to settle misconduct lawsuits since 2019. A federal judge ruled that the Trump administration does not have the authority to kill Manhattan's congestion pricing program. Judge Lewis Lehman said that the Trump administration's attempt to revoke approval for the first of its kind program was unlawful, handing a victory to the MTA following a months-long legal battle. Singer Justin Timberlake is suing the village of Sag Harbor and its police department in an attempt to block the release of the body cam footage from his arrest in 2024, claiming concerns that it would damage his reputation, subject him to personal harm, and be an invasion of privacy. Timberlake pleaded guilty in September 2024 to driving while ability impaired and received community service, as well as offered a public apology as part of a plea agreement. A guide vehicle at a half marathon event mistakenly led the lead runner off course, potentially costing her a position at the World Championships this fall. Marathon runner Jess McLean was in the lead with only a mile and a half to the finish line when she and 3 other runners were guided off course by a police escort and an official lead vehicle. McLean found her way back on course and ended up finishing in 9th place. U.S. Track and Field, which serves as the sport's governing body, says that they are looking into the incident. Bad Bunny has broken the all-time viewership record for the Super Bowl halftime show. The Puerto Rican-born artist's mid-game show was viewed by more than 4.1 billion people across the globe, broadcast, YouTube, and social platforms. Following his performance, streams for his top track surged 7 times the average on Apple Music. Coming up, the twin brothers in Indianapolis on opposite sides of the political aisle. One, a Democratic city councilman, the other, an organizer for Turning Point. But could their civility and respect for one another be a guide for us all when we come back? Welcome back, everyone. As we've been reporting, today begins primary season ahead of the November midterms, a time when we often remind ourselves of the old saying that all politics is local. Well, if that's the case, the Nick and Nathan Roberts of Indiana are proving those local politics often start as a family affair. They are Gen Z 25-year-old twins who are identical, but not when it comes to their politics, blazing trails at opposite ends of the political spectrum and making headlines for how they're bridging the divide. Here's our Devin Dwyer in Indianapolis.
Think it's likely to pass?
Indianapolis City County Councilor Nick Roberts has a passion for local politics.
My brother, he was at the governor's house for dinner a few nights ago.
So does his identical twin brother Nathan.
I'm gonna put up my posters.
Who founded an Indiana political advocacy group last year and is a state organizer for Turning Point, the group founded by Charlie Kirk. The Roberts twins are members of the next generation of America's civic leaders. Both Gen Z college dropouts.
Even when I'm not running for office, I like to knock on doors.
Still living together with their grandparents. Sharing a love of their dogs, Yoda and Pepper.
She's so loyal.
And of books.
It's like a New York Times bestseller list. It's like Shortest Way Home, Pete Buttigieg, Dreams for My Father by Barack Obama.
Their love for their community and their country, they say, is matched by a desire to explore the world.
Singapore is so awesome. I'd go to like Arkansas or like Colonial Virginia, maybe Alaska.
But when it comes to their views on President Trump, Democrats, and the state of the country today, Nick and Nathan are anything but alike.
From the time we were younger, he just ended up more in right-wing, circles on the internet. I was in more liberal circles, and I don't really know what happened. I'm not left-wing.
Did one of you gravitate towards the parent that had that persuasion?
Well, our dad was conservative and our mom was liberal. Well, our mom was not very political, but she's not liberal because of me. I guess those are good examples of our family being divided.
Counselor Roberts is a die-hard Democrat. Nathan identifies as a MAGA Republican. They look so much alike, occasionally their politics are misidentified in public. A scenario so concerning to Nick that he took to social media last year to clarify.
So just know if you see somebody that looks like me at a Republican event, or definitely if they're wearing a MAGA hat, it is not me, it is him.
Are you terrified of being identified as MAGA?
Oh yeah, me, absolutely. I mean, I am not a fan of Donald Trump. Never been a fan of Donald Trump. You voted for him. No, he's joking.
But what is it about the Republican Party, their platform, their ideas that resonates with you?
Immigration would be the number one issue that the Republicans speak to me way more than Democrats do. On the economy, certainly. On the role of the federal government, I would say certainly foreign policy. Honestly, besides one exception being dogs and animals, I'm more of a softie on that.
The twins got engaged in politics as Donald Trump rode down that escalator in 2015. Getting involved in their first campaigns in 2020 and then supporting rival candidates for president in 2024.
But what was it like when the results became clear?
That was a terrible night. I was like, our country is so screwed. And I didn't want to deal with his craziness. So he was smart to not mess with me that night.
As 20-something partisans, the Roberts brothers are outliers. More members of Gen Z identify as independents than any other group of adults. Roughly 1 in 4 identify as Democrats, even fewer as Republicans.
If you want to make a difference, you have to be involved. And it's easy to, I think, throw your hands up and say, well, I'm an independent. I hate both parties. But if you actually want to be engaged in the process, you kind of have to pick a side. I think a lot of people go independent because it's kind of like a sign of like purity, like I'm above the thing. But really, it's just like you not having much of a voice. Although I think in spirit, I sort of understand and respect what people do when they go independent. I just don't think it's the right, like, really strategy.
On that, they agree, along with support for public safety, veterans issues, and even protecting the environment, they say. Their deepest disagreement is over immigration.
I support law enforcement, but there's come a point where, you know, we are a nation of immigrants. Everybody came from immigrants at one point or another, and we have to do it humanely with laws, but not we're treating people inhumanely like we've seen over the last few months.
Melting pot, American dream, nation of immigrants, those terms none of them even existed until post-1900. You never heard George Washington saying America is a nation of immigrants.
Is there anything that Nathan's saying that makes sense to you?
He is right in terms of assimilation. Like, I think you have to have people that are at least interested in learning the culture and being involved and learning the language. But again, we've always been a country of immigrants, and I think there are a lot of people that used to look at Italians and Irish and different groups and Eastern Europeans in a certain way 70, 80, 100 years ago that are now looking at different groups that way, and it's always a revolving door, you know, a revolving enemy of whoever the recent group is that's come here, and it's too bad.
Is there anything about what Nick has said about immigration that has rubbed off on you?
I mean, be nice to people, sure. The whole point about we've always been a nation of immigrants, when has Logansport, Indiana, Seymour, Indiana, Lawrence, Indiana ever had 35% non-English speakers?
So is the answer no?
You have to, I wasn't really listening for what we probably agreed on something though. I definitely agree that we're a nation of laws.
On 95% of the issues, they say, they sharply disagree and are dug in.
Is the country on the right track or the wrong track?
So far off the wrong track.
Right track, but there's a lot of work to do.
Tariffs, good or bad for the economy?
Good.
Terrible. Terrible.
How about vaccines? Are you guys vaccinated?
I'm vaccinated.
I'm not vaccinated for COVID. That was how I got my political origin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Roberts.
When President Trump demanded Indiana redraw its election map to help Republicans this fall,
I'm 100% in favor of the new congressional maps.
All right, Nick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Nick Roberts.
The twins testified against each other in the State House.
I have a lot of deep concern for this.
Still, Nick and Nathan claim never to get angry with each other and even manage to say nice things.
He's very intelligent, but I love the fact he gets involved. You have all these people giving their opinions about stuff on the internet, but none of them lift a finger besides maybe voting, even if they do that. He's someone, he shows up to stuff. Republicans say, you know what, your brother, he's committed. He shows up to stuff all the time. I respect that.
Even though he pretends to be like a very inflammatory guy on social media and trying to be very provocative, I think he is very well read on history and knows a lot of his stuff and the law, especially immigration.
And with no desire for higher political office for now, the Roberts twins say they're just content to be counselor and constituent as brothers.
Believe it or not, he's actually not one of my most demanding constituents.
I mean, there's been a time when I'm like, you know, you could change that like traffic sign to be slightly better and then there would be such a traffic jam at that place at 5 p.m. And he's like, yeah, that would be a good idea.
Modeling civility and love despite the deepest political differences.
Your brother is running for re-election next year. Yeah. Are you going to run against him?
Honestly, I couldn't do that to Nick. He would have to like a real challenge running against me, and I wouldn't want to freak him out by running against him, so I don't think I would do that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Sibling rivalry at its finest. Our thanks to Devin Dwyer for that. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Lindsay Davis. Be sure to join us for our special coverage on midterm primaries for Arkansas, North Carolina, and Texas coming up right after this. Stay with us.